Good evening. Our main theme this year in our focus season is rejoicing in times of struggle, a Christian way of life. We're in the third week now. In our first week, we focused on the privilege of living together as a community of faith, a community that has koinonia, fellowship with the gospel, and is partakers in the carrying out of the gospel. We received a call in that week to live together for the sake of the gospel, to be a community that exists for the sake of carrying out the gospel into the world. Last week, in our second week, our focus fell on continuing with that lifestyle, living for the sake of the gospel, even amid persecution, amid suffering and opposition. We looked at Paul in his imprisonment. We looked at how there were opponents that also proclaimed the gospel but had something against him. And we got to that difficult verse in Philippians 1 verse 29 that says that it has been granted to us on behalf of Christ not only to believe on him, but also to suffer for him. One of the important issues that already started to come up in those first 2 weeks, and that is in our main focus this week, is the fact that we are called to live this life together. The unity amongst believers is in our focus this week. We usually only realize the value of this unity, of the fellowship that we share in, when we come into times of suffering, when persecution occurs, when we realize that we need people around us that support us. Paul puts it like this in chapter 1 verse 27. Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then when I come and see you and only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in one spirit, contending as one man for the faith of the gospel. See, living together, working together, struggling together, all of this in unity is a very strong underlying theme in all of this letter to the Philippians. One congregation that existed amongst other people out of a woman that was still a slave, a jailer and his family, a businesswoman from another city, some retired Roman soldiers, and also two sisters in faith that had strong personal issues between them, strong personal differences. None of these people would live together in unity if it was just left over to normal, natural relationships. Add to this the work of the devil as the adversary and the divider, the one that will do everything in his power to divide the church, to drive it away from each other, coming like a roaring lion with persecution from the outside, or cunningly coming like a serpent, trying to sow division in the ranks of the congregation itself. To maintain and expand this unity that was formed by the Lord himself won't just happen naturally, won't happen by itself. Despite all of the good things that Paul says about this congregation and about which he is thankful to the Lord, there's one thing that he mentions that is preventing his joy from being complete. And that is their struggle to live as a congregation that is truly united. His prayer in chapter 1 verses 9 and 10, that their love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that they may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless until the day of Christ, surely also applies to this struggle that they had to foster the unity between them. It really takes love and insight, wisdom, when unlikely people are brought together into one community, into one fellowship of faith. He already gives us some direction on this point when he speaks in the first chapter on his own opponents, those people that proclaimed the gospel but for some reason had something against him. He mainly addresses this issue in chapter 2, where he speaks on and gives us advice on how people should be united, and then in one of the most beautiful, probably one of the most beautiful chapters in all of the Bible, he continues to call us to emulate our behavior, to have the same attitude as the attitude of Christ Jesus. Later in chapter 4, Euodia and Syntyche, the two sisters that had a quarrel, are also exhorted to be united. And the rest of the church, the rest of the community is called on to support them in managing to achieve this. The Lord has brought us together as a congregation, living together here in this place. We are made up of people from different ages and genders and language group and races. If you look at us, you must ask, how is unity possible at all? And then we answer, it's only when the gospel of Jesus Christ is the main thing, when it stays in the center of our being, and when we live together in the attitude of Christ. May God help us to this. Good evening.